Today, wanting to cover things that are very important for progressing with exercise to kind of achieve our goals. So when we're looking to shape our bodies in a certain way, we can of course always lose or gain fat to get closer to what we're trying to get. But unfortunately, we don't control where fat goes on our body, other than, if you're on HRT or not, that affects some things. When it comes to shaping things, even though we can't put fat somewhere that we want to or remove it from somewhere, what we can do is control where we build muscle and where we do not. Because muscle, instead of fat, is built by your body where you need it the most, and it is not kept in places where your body doesn't need it. This is called atrophy. It's where, if you lie in a bed all day because you get hospitalized or something, like, you will lose muscle mass across your entire body. We can control where we put muscle by doing exercises for the areas that we want to do. This is how muscles are a lot more specific to where you actually use them. And so when we want to build more muscle in an area, that means that we're going to have to progressively increase what we're doing to prove to our body that we need muscle there. This is essentially, there's a concept called progressive overload that any strength training, any muscle training program is going to require, and that is the idea that you go into the gym and then you do your workouts to use your muscles and overload what your body is really able to do, and then your body will respond to that, build more muscle, get more strength, and then you have to progressively increase what you're doing to actually get to that point where your body goes, oh shoot, we still really need more muscle to actually do this. And so you just continue this process over and over until eventually your body is getting closer to the amount of muscle in an area that you want. At that point, you can reduce how much you're doing to just maintain that level of muscle versus proving that you need more. Now, there are a lot of different ways to progressively overload your muscles, and some of them have limits, some of them basically don't. The most simple is obviously, how much weight you're forcing your muscles to hold, or how many times you do that. So that's going to be, if you're in the gym, if you're trying to do a squat with 100 pounds versus 200 pounds, you're increasing the weight. Versus if you want to do it, 10 times versus 20, that is increasing the reps. And both of those can be used, to increase how difficult it's going to be for our body, up to a certain point of, what your body is able to hold for that. And as far as weight goes, sometimes like grip can become a limitation for certain exercises, or it's just hard to push even further in the equipment that we have, if there's a limit to how much a machine has for weight, or if you have a bodyweight exercise. And that's where reps makes a lot more sense. But then for the number of repetitions that you do, there's a certain limit where, like, if I do bodyweight squats, for example, I'm going to be doing like 100 bodyweight squats before it starts to feel challenging. And so that's just generally not productive. And so that's where, other methods of progression can come in as well. Some of those being range of motion. This is, for example, if you're doing a squat, how low are you going down? Are you going just like barely down at all? Or is your butt practically touching the ground? Those are going to be different in how challenging they are. Or, even if we have ways to artificially increase how low we can go. So, for example, like a deadlift where you're lifting weight off of the ground, you can stand on something to then lift weight that is, even further below where your feet are, or, elevate it so that it's closer to your body to make it easier or harder depending on what you're trying to do. And these are all ways to kind of tweak the way that you're overloading muscles. But I would say that it's always important to consider that you want to keep form good at all times. This is because, good form versus bad form is also a method of progression, but it's also something where if you have bad form and you do an exercise with a lot of weight, that's where you start to see, a risk of injury. The other thing that you can very easily tweak for this is going to be something called time under tension. And so that's, if you do a squat and you have 10 squats to do and you just go through them as quickly as possible versus trying to slow down on the way as you kind of descend in the squat and then hold for a second at the bottom and then slowly push up, that will mean that your muscles are being tense for a longer period of time. And that's also another way to make, an exercise more intense. But all of those and the workout programs that I have written for you are going to be applied in different ways. You'll kind of be able to see that. But there are some things I do to try and lay out how your workout programs are made to ensure that we're able to do all of this safely. So, for example, I don't recommend, especially for bodyweight exercises, trying to do like an exercise is going to be challenging you in like the 1 to 5 rep range, because a lot of times to do that requires, for bodyweight, a more advanced movement where the form is trickier. And if you're only able to do it for like 1 to 5 reps, generally that means the chance of failing form and then injuring yourself is much, much higher. So especially for when people are starting out, even though I personally wouldn't want to do this at the weight that I'm currently at, I might put you on a set of like 10 to 20 reps for a barbell squat, even though I might do closer to 6 to 10, because I want you to be able to keep it at a lighter weight and be able to focus as much on form as possible. Versus, every rep being a fight for your life. In addition, something that's very important to consider for this is that what is required for progressive overload depends on how much training you have done and like your existing strength level. So in the chat, I dropped a couple of pictures. So I'm going to point to the third. This is the general adaptation syndrome super compensated athlete. But this is basically, the process of working in an ideal situation to get stronger. And so the alarm reaction is essentially stress of what you are doing and how hard that is. The harder that is, the deeper that line is going to go down on this graph. And the thing is that, as you can kind of see from the two other pictures, if you don't really do something that's challenging at all, you just kind of challenge yourself a little bit, your body goes, okay, that was a little bit of a challenge, but it's not enough to justify, your body actually adapting and getting stronger. And on the other hand, if you go crazy and you do like all sorts of really hard work, that can be an alarm reaction that is too big for your body to properly recover from. And so your performance will actually dip compared to, if you had just done nothing. So the ideal situation is to find this sweet spot where whatever you're doing is challenging you, and maybe you're sore like the next day or something, or just later that day. But then you feel like you get stronger from it. And of course, over time, as you get stronger, we will have to progress your workouts to continue doing this. This is why, something I've seen a lot of times is people who do YouTube workouts. They try and follow like a routine on YouTube. And the problem with that is, when you look at a pre-made routine, if it's not for you, or if it's not something you can easily adjust to what you're trying to do, if it's, too much, then you're going to get a severe alarm reaction and just not really get anything out of it. If it's too little, you're not going to get an alarm reaction and also not really get anything out of it. And so a lot of times, if someone sticks to the same routine and there is no way to progress the difficulty of that, it's just like, okay, we're going to do 3 sets of 30 squats and then a couple sets of this at these specific reps, that doesn't work out well long term, because then eventually, even if you make progress on it in the beginning, if you aren't continuously making it more challenging for yourself, you're going to get stuck. And you're not really going to see progress because it won't be as challenging anymore. And that's why, it's very important to always continue to push yourself, ideally every single time you go into the gym. But also there's going to be times you want to recognize where, for example, stress for this isn't just physical. What I mean by that is if you're like mentally stressed, that changes. Your body isn't great at differentiating that from physical stress. It affects you very similarly in terms of athletic performance. And so if you look at, for example, a picture of Obama before and after becoming president, he looks like he aged, like 20 years in like 8 years. And it's because it's just when you're very stressed that physically breaks down your body over time, very similarly to exercise, but just constantly. And so I just want you to recognize, if there are times where you don't sleep as well, or if your nutrition hasn't been good, or if life circumstances have been troubling you, you're really stressed, that can legitimately mean that you are not as strong that day that you're going into the gym. And so what's going to be required to get that progressive overload where you challenge yourself and you get stronger and your muscles get bigger and you get closer to your goal isn't to go, I'm stressed, I'm not doing as much as I feel like I normally can, I'm going to just push through really hard and do extra work to try and punish myself. That's not how you should view workouts. Workouts are something that, challenges yourself in a healthy way so that you get stronger in the future. And at times, what challenges you is going to be very different. And this is also true for cardio. That's definitely a different subject for another day in terms of how that works and some of the benefits of that. But just recognize that, there's going to be times where something is feeling really challenging and like it's tough on your body. You want to take a step back and just relax a bit and just go, okay, yeah, like if this is what's challenging you right now, then that means that you should be hitting progressive overload, and that is ultimately the goal. And finally, the last thing to consider with this, kind of ironic going to Marzipan's question, for would additional exercises that work the same area count? Yes. There is one condition to this, though. So when you are doing exercises, we want to start with exercises that work either different body parts or that work the largest body part and that are multi-joint before single joint, and then, working multiple muscles before single muscles. So what I mean by this is, for a lot of you, I have you on a 3-day, full body workout plan. So it means that every day you're going to some extent, hit your legs, you're going to hit your glutes, you're going to hit your core, you might hit your back and upper body if that's something that you desire, and we're going to hit every one of those muscle groups. So a lot of you don't have the same level of additional exercises for each body part compared to what a more advanced lifter might need. And this is just going to be a quick why you don't want to copy someone else's workout routine. This was my last leg day. You can see, started out, I had a warm-up with 2 sets of 12 for seated rows and lat pull-downs, both at 50 pounds. Then 2 sets of 10 for both just an air squat and a high jump. Followed by doing, CV, please do not, you will fucking die. Actually, you will literally die. followed by back squat at 185 pounds, and then some other goblet squats and other exercises at lower weights. This is obviously a lot more exercises than all of you have in your workout plans, and that's because my legs, I've trained them for a lot longer, and so it takes more to push them to get stronger. And so this is what I'm currently doing. This is a strength-based routine since I'm trying to push for a higher, like, 1 rep max equivalent on squat from a dude named Jeremy that I found over on Twitter. He's like a strength trainer. So this is following, one of his plans that I had done for myself. As you can kind of see from it, excluding the warm-up, because that was just to get your body ready for, working out, obviously, I have back squat. This is very heavy. It works your entire lower body as well as your core and back. Everything in my body needs to be tight and ready to go to do this. And, it's working every part of my leg. I'm moving both the joints at my knee and hip. And also, the joints in like my shoulder and elbow need to be at least engaged to make sure that I have control of the bar as I'm doing each rep. Then if we have, goblet squat, kind of the same thing, but this is a lot lighter. But then a side lunge, a lot less, core here. This is more just to kind of stretch out the legs, and it's a lighter weight. And in both cases, we're going, down from back squat to a goblet squat to a side lunge. Then, we have dumbbell step-ups. This is basically just a quad workout. It doesn't really hit anything else. And so, even though it is, like, still using the legs, it's not engaging the glutes as much, and it's not engaging the core as much as a back squat would, because it's a lot lighter, and it's more of just that upward pushing motion of your quad. High jumps gets into some athletic training principles of why that's in there. And then, of course, at the end, I have calf raises, and hanging knee raises and Russian twists are there as like ab exercises. Both of those are much smaller muscles than, the entirety of my legs. And while I'm doing both ab exercises and, calf raises, that doesn't really work other muscles. Now, the problem that you might see if you try and make your own workout routine, for example, is if, let's say, we reversed the order of this, and that this kind of illustrates why this order is important. So let's say I start out with, hanging knee raises. Okay, so I tire out my core. Then I go do calf raises, I tire out my calves. Then I do step-ups. I kind of tire out my quads, but I'm not really sure how much to at this point, maybe. And then I go to a heavy back squat. At this point, I've tired up my core, which for a back squat, you want to keep that tight as you get into higher weight to make sure that you're not going to hurt yourself. I've tired up my quads, a little bit, and I've tired up my calves. So I don't know what's actually going to fail first. Whereas, if I do a back squat normally, depending on where I feel that left or where I'm feeling it like it's challenging the most, I can probably tell, okay, this is like the section of my lower body that is the weakest and that needs to get stronger right now, that needs to get bigger. But if you, wear out your core first and then try and do that, that can cause problems where maybe your core fails before everything else, even though your core normally shouldn't be the limiting factor. And that means that, if you're trying to work your legs with a back squat and you do abs right beforehand, and then you have to stop because you're like losing strength in your core and you're not able to maintain good form, well then you're not pushing the muscles that you're trying to as hard as you can because you worked another smaller muscle beforehand. And the same goes with, joints. I think this is a little bit more applicable for upper body exercises, personally. But like, for example, you would want to do a bench press before you do a, like, bicep curl. for the same reason of, your bench press requires multiple joints. And so if there's going to be, one of those is the point that's causing a challenge for you where you need to get stronger, if you arbitrarily tire out, another section of your arm before doing that, you may fail in that section of your arm instead of what's actually the weakest section, that would have needed to get stronger from doing a bench press. Versus, in like how this workout is laid out, we have our back squat for me, which is working the entire lower body, and then individual exercises for like each section of the legs and core to make sure that I'm making all of that progressively stronger, so that each section of my legs, like everything that goes into a back squat, is going to get stronger. And I'm also, still doing a back squat, still pushing myself in total. There's some other reasons why that's important, but some of those I don't think you'll need to focus on as much. But the big thing is definitely just always make sure that you can maintain good form. And always make sure that, like, when I've written the workout programs for you, a lot of times it doesn't matter as much. Because for most of you, you're doing a full body workout where it's like a upper body exercise, a leg exercise, a core exercise, a back exercise. And you could kind of screw up the order of those a little bit more. But if you have multiple exercises that use the same body part, please do them in the order that I put them in your workout sheet. They are in that order for a good reason. As you, continue progressing with exercises, you're going to need to challenge things a bit more. And so, when you're a beginner like you are right now, that's why I think that doing a 3-day workout plan is probably ideal, because that gives you as much time as possible between workouts to recover, while also, letting you work everything. So, for example, another popular 3-day split is called push-pull legs, which is basically a push is like a bench press motion where you're like pushing something away from your body forwards or like up over above your head, like with something that work your shoulders. Pulling is most motions that work your back, and then legs is pretty self-explanatory. People will sometimes double that up and do 2 push-pull legs in a week and be working out 6 times per week, which means that they'll be working their legs twice, their, arms and their ability to, and like their chest and stuff twice, and their back twice. Versus if you were doing a 3-day full body program, you were able to work out all of those sections 3 times per week and do it in half as many days. So that means less time traveling to the gym, less time in total in the gym. But of course, this I think makes the most sense, especially when starting out, because you don't need to push yourself as hard for each muscle to see growth, as you mentioned earlier. So one exercise for a couple sets, really pushing yourself, maybe all you need for 6 to 12 months to make consistent progress week after week, in terms of both strength and muscle gains. Versus, as you hit kind of like 6 months and beyond and like 12 months and beyond of consistently doing these workouts, that's where it may make more sense to include a lot more, exercises for individual body parts, but that are meant to specialize for, like doing a bench press and then a bicep curl. Where it's like, okay, we want to make sure that we aren't just doing a bench press, but also working the individual muscles that make up that motion, and your upper body to train them all. But starting out, to make progress, you need less stimulus, less challenge, and so you don't have to do that, and you can just pack everything into 3 days and still have like an hour and a half long workout that's going to get you progress for everything. So that's like generally I try and stick to 3-day workouts for people when I can, or 1 or 2 day workouts if you have challenges for time or you're just getting into it, or other things like that. Yeah, there are definitely a lot of different ways to exercise. Um, I think the other thing I should mention is just as a reference for bodyweight exercises. Like I'll just use the bodyweight guide to a big butt as a good example because you all have the access to this. But if first you start off and you have like an air squat, that's basically your entire upper body, but it's on both legs. Then you move to a like split squat where it's like, okay, this is a little bit closer to a lunge. And so it's most of your body weight is on one leg versus then going to like a single leg squat, like, a shrimp squat or a pistol squat. And that is, now the entirety of your body weight is on one leg. So yeah, you kind of have to, push, do twice as many reps because you have to do 2 sets, one for each leg to even things out. But that's going to make it so that every time that you do that exercise, it's going to be a lot more challenging for the legs having a push, and that means that, hey, if you are getting stronger, you don't feel like you can challenge yourself with bodyweight squats anymore, then try, split squats, or a Bulgarian split squat, where you're slowly moving more of your body weight onto one limb at a time to make that more challenging, and that's how progression happens. But of course, for bodyweight exercises, this also generally means that it's pretty multiplicative of your body weight. If you weigh 300 pounds, you probably don't need single leg squats for a very long time. If you weigh 100 pounds, you might be able to start doing a single leg squat almost right away. You know, just because there's that much less body weight that you have to push, and that's your form of resistance, and that's, always worth considering. The same goes for, like push-ups or like back exercises as well. If you do a push-up on the ground, I believe that is equivalent to bench pressing about a third of your weight. So, if you find someone where they weigh 150 pounds, okay, them doing a push-up is about equivalent to bench pressing like 50 pounds one time. Or like having two 25-pound dumbbells and pushing those. But then if you lose weight or gain weight, that becomes more challenging. But of course, the other thing is, if you change the angle or find other ways to just decrease how much of your body is weighing down on, whatever muscle is being used, that's going to change the challenge. So if you're, doing a handstand push-up, your entire body weight is on top of your arms. That is literally equivalent to, being able to bench press your body weight plus the challenge of, staying balanced while doing that. Definitely tricky, or if someone's like, I can't do a push-up, what they really mean is they can't do a bench press for a third of their weight. And that's like, okay then, there's probably a smaller amount of weight though that you can do a push-up for. So what if you do it on your knees? That might, decrease it to be like a fourth or a fifth of your body weight, and maybe you can do more of those. Or what if you do it and you're doing push-ups on an elevated surface that you're, like, instead of, being flat against the ground, you're doing it at like 45 degrees or against a wall. Those are going to make it a lot easier to do because you're effectively pushing less weight just by having less of your body weight be underneath where you're trying to use the muscles for. And then, of course, with calisthenics and bodyweight exercises, stuff gets really, really complicated when you get to the advanced things, because people start getting gymnastic rings and like weighted vests and other things to increase the weight and allow for a lot of just absurdly difficult exercises. And it's kind of its own thing. But I definitely think that's why, I think personally, for someone who is overweight, for example, if you're 300 pounds, I think that it can be easier to go to the gym than doing bodyweight exercises at certain points because, let's say you want to do a pull-up. If we get you a resistance bands, you can still do pulling motions that are going to work your back, but you probably just have to lose a lot of weight before doing a pull-up is even a possibility. And there are some, exercises that we can do to try and work towards doing a pull-up, like what's called a negative, where you start at the top of a pull-up, and like you get yourself there, and then you try and slow down your descent to the bottom of the pull-up. And that's still, working the same muscles, but if you are so heavy that you can't even slow that down at all, then what might make a lot more sense is just, okay, let's go to the gym and get one of those pull-up machines where you can just get a supportive bar underneath you that pushes you up and then select how much weight we're going to take off. And that way, you're able to go, okay, I can't do a pull-up of my body weight, but I can do it for my body weight minus 50 pounds or minus 100 pounds. And then that makes it easier. Or, doing something more similar to grabbing resistance bands, and that would be like a cable machine at the gym to do, some other sort of exercise like that, or just using dumbbells or a barbell to pull towards your body in some way, and then you can just add weight to that versus just having your body weight and going, well, I can't do this, so I don't know what I can do. That's where weights come in, I think, definitely, is just that you can't easily change your body weight on short notice. That takes a while. But you can change weights on short notice. A bit more rambly than I expected this to be, but I think that covers about everything that I wanted to make sure to hit for today. So just going to move to Q&A.